Hello, everyone. I'm Susan Rinne, and I'm here with Mark Hublar, and we're here to talk to you today about supporting employment for all. Mark, do you want to say a bit about yourself?
Well, my name is Mark Joseph Hublar, and I'm a college, I graduated from college, major in public speaking, and that's me because I'm always going to be like that. I got 3 living brothers, I got 2 living parents, and I care about everybody. And now I live on my own. I'm working to be a motivational speaking cross country, and I'm looking for a side job. So probably I'll be working on the subway maybe. And I got a moped to ride on, and I don't drive a car because I'm always being nervous so that. I'm 55 years old. This month I'm going to be, in September 1st, I'll be 56. So I'm going to get a little older.
Well, thank you, Mark. Thank you. So Mark and I are going to talk to you again about employment today and why a focus on employment for people with disabilities is needed. We're going to talk about the status of people with disabilities, give you a little background information on that, tell you what people with disabilities have to say about the solutions to their low unemployment rate, and talk to you about how you can establish a disability inclusion initiative in your workplace. And then Mark's going to tell you a little bit more about his journey. So I wanted to start out with this particular slide that gives you that, that kind of background information about employment for Hoosiers with disabilities. Even after 30 years of the ADA, we have a long way to go. In the country, we know that 1 out of 4 adults with disabilities, 1 out of 4 adults have a disability. But in the state of Indiana, only 21% of people who have a disability are working. Even though 2 out of 3 of them say they want a job. As a result, people with disabilities are 2 times more likely to be poor. And those individuals living in poverty and dependent on benefits really want not to be there. They want to be in jobs and they want to be self-sufficient. But a lot of this goes back to how people with disabilities are supported. If you look at the state of Indiana, we have one of the lowest employment rates, particularly for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We have only about 10% of people in employment. And nationally, that's around 19%. But you'll see on this graph, the states that are to the far right on the graph are states that have much higher employment rates for people with disabilities, the most severe disabilities. And why is that? Well, the big reason is because these states have really focused energy, funding, and policies around employment. These high-performing states have learned that if that happens, then individuals with disabilities can and do get employment. So the state of Indiana did make some progress. Back in 2017, we passed a law, the Employment First Law. And that law says that employment in the community is the first and preferred outcome of services for Hoosiers with disabilities. So what that means is if state agencies are providing services and supports, then it has to be focused on employment. And that goes for all agencies: mental health, Medicaid, developmental disabilities, and any service, workforce development, any service that focuses on serving people with disabilities. And what the law further did was set down some guiding principles. And it said those people needed to have access to real jobs with real wages. This means not sheltered workshop, not sub-minimum wage, which in our country today, people with disabilities are still allowed to be paid sub-minimum wage. That everyone can work. It's important to note that, again, the people who live in the state of Washington are not different than the people who live in Indiana. Their disability levels are the same, and yet they're working at higher levels. That everyone, including you and me, needs support in the workplace, and that we have to focus on individualizing that. And that services have to prioritize and really look at employment and how whatever they do supports that. And when finally we're focused on competitive integrated employment, things that provide people with equal opportunity, full participation, and allow them, again, to get out of the cycle of poverty that they've been in. So in 2018, the Indiana Governor's Council funded an initiative as a result of that Employment First legislation to focus on getting people with disabilities involved in making change. One of the things we noticed is as we looked around the table, people with disabilities often weren't represented in designing systems. They weren't represented in looking at how funding was distributed. So for example, only 1% of dollars in our country go to employment. So if people want jobs, how can we possibly do that with so little money focused on that? So Work to Include established a coalition of hundreds of people with disabilities and advocates around the state. Our goals were simple. We want to design a system that promotes competitive integrated employment, look at what the state agencies are doing and help them to make a difference in terms of how they focus their funding, how they develop their policies, but also look at local initiatives. So how can Fort Wayne, Clarksville, Evansville, Terre Haute, Indianapolis, Gary, Kokomo, Marion, how can they look at what's happening in their communities and develop initiatives to make a difference locally? And then finally, we wanted to document the success of people with disabilities. We know that there are very few role models out there for people with disabilities. They don't see themselves oftentimes in those high-level jobs or in competitive employment. So we want to document that and share that both with the business community, the general public, and people with disabilities so they know what's possible. One of the things that we know is oftentimes individuals and families have fairly low expectations as a result of not having those demonstrations of success. So we established coalitions across 11 communities. And as I said, we have around 400 participants. And those people are developing local action plans. And as we speak, are getting ready to roll out some employer awareness and some employer focus initiatives in those 11 communities. So I thought you'd be interested in what people with disabilities told us about what would make a difference. We didn't want to approach people with disabilities with tell us what the barriers are, because frankly, they already know what those are. We approached them with tell us how to fix it. And here's what they said. We need a clear and unified set of state policies, and people in state agencies need to talk to each other and make sure they're not working at cross purposes. And we need funding that then supports that employment initiative. They need comprehensive transportation options statewide. Transportation is still one of the biggest barriers for individuals with disabilities. We're all looking forward to autonomous vehicles, but until they're here, we need to think and talk about innovative transportation. So for example, in Fort Wayne, the people there have talked about Uber by us for us and are working on trying to develop a system whereby people with disabilities who have accessible transportation can provide accessible transportation to those people with disabilities who are going to work, thereby creating 2 jobs. The other thing that they told us is that right now there are a lot of people out there providing service, but nobody holds them accountable. I spent 40 years as a service provider. And I provided services to people with disabilities in South Central Indiana. And no one ever asked me the question, why doesn't this person have a job? And what are you doing to help them get there? So we want to make employment something that everyone focuses on. And then transition services really need to invest in high school work experience programs so kids leave with a clear career path, whether it's going on to post-secondary or leaving into a job. Statewide benefits planning and assistance. So a lot of times individuals with disabilities can be dependent on Medicaid and Social Security and other public assistance programs. And until they understand the impact of going to work on those benefits, they're often afraid to do so. There is benefits planning assistance available to people, but it's very limited, very sporadic, and there's lots of conflicting information from professionals about the impact of going to work on, say, Social Security or Medicaid. And then finally, town hall participants across the board said they would like employers like you to know more about the benefits of employing people with disabilities. So one reason for today's presentation is to help get that to you. So what's been your experience hiring people with disabilities? And I'm thinking you probably heard some of these myths that I'm about to hopefully explode for you. One of the 4 most mentioned myths that employers have about hiring people with disabilities are listed here. First, that the Americans with Disability Act requires employers to hire unqualified individuals. Well, of course, you know that's not true, right? The ADA only requires you to provide reasonable accommodations to individuals. And if somebody's not going to be able to fulfill the needs of that position, you're not required to hire them. And neither are you not allowed to let someone go. That's an often myth that I've heard from employers is once I hire someone, then I won't be able to fire them. The ADA does not say that. It just says, again, you have to understand the person's disability, and if there is an accommodation that is reasonable, then you need to provide that. Another thing, people really don't understand the capabilities of people with disabilities. There are people with disabilities with law degrees, people with disabilities who are accountants, software engineers, all across the spectrum. So there are people that can meet the performance requirements, and as I'll show you in a minute, do. Another one is they will be absent more often. Not the case. And probably one of the biggest ones too is that it's going to cost a lot to hire, cost a lot to onboard, cost a lot to provide those accommodations. And again, that doesn't bear out in any of the research. So recently, there was a group called Accenture that did a report, and they looked at 140 companies across 4 years. And they looked at the performance of the company against companies that had a disability inclusion initiative against the performance of companies that did not. And what they found was that those companies that had those initiatives outperformed their peers on profitability, and that the individuals that were employed actually had an average or better performance, an average or better attendance. So it just blows a lot of those myths out of the water. And then the other thing that a recent study found, for those of you who are out there selling your wares to customers, retail stores, grocers, consumers actually have a preference for companies that employ people with disabilities. And so it makes a big difference in terms of how the community views you. And it only makes sense that if your employees represent the community, that the community is going to be more supportive of your business. So what about accommodations? Because yes, that's something that people are concerned about. Well, accommodations honestly are not that much of an issue. There's a group called the Job Accommodations Network that has been around for years, and that they've surveyed thousands of businesses over several years and have found consistently that the benefits far outweigh any associated costs for accommodations. And oftentimes those accommodations end up benefiting other individuals in the workplace. So high percentage, 58% of accommodations, you know, almost more than half of accommodations cost absolutely nothing. They're very small to make. A schedule change, moving things around in the workplace, allowing somebody to work from home. And they end up costing almost nothing. While the ones that do cost on average $500. And only around 20% cost over $1,000. So really, there's not a lot of expense in providing those accommodations. And again, if you look at the benefits, they far outweigh them. So I'd like to share a video with you from Bonnie Bomer. Bonnie is a person with a disability who works at Indiana Disability Rights. And so she has this to say about providing accommodations.
My name is Bonnie Bomer. I'm an advocacy specialist with Indiana Disability Rights. I help people who are facing barriers to employment. So if they're running into problems with accessing accommodations on the workplace, I can help them with that. I advocate for the employer to provide the needed accommodations. Sometimes we work with vocational rehabilitation services, and we advocate for VR to provide the services the person needs to get to be employed. Well, one of my accommodations is my mobility aid, which is Fiesta, who's down here next to me. My employer allows me to take time with her to take her outside when she needs breaks, and sometimes just to play with her when she needs breaks. She's got a lot of energy. I also have a computer laptop with speech and magnification so that I can see and hear what's on my computer. I use what's called Zoom Text Fusion, which is a combination of the screen reader and the enlarger. I have a large monitor, larger than normal monitor, so I can see what's on my monitor. I have a device called a closed circuit television, which allows me to read print materials, put them on my computer screen. And then I have a lot of little handheld magnifiers and devices like that. My theory is you have to have a good sense of humor, never leave home without it. I think that you walk into situations and people do not understand. They don't understand, first of all, that you have limitations. It's okay to have limitations, and there are ways around those limitations. That's what accommodations allow you to do. And sometimes those are modifications of maybe a schedule where instead of working from 8 to 4, maybe you work 9 to 5 or something like that. But there's lots of ways to work with your employer and to get the services and the supports you need to work successfully.
So you can see, if you could see Fiesta, I'm going to get back to my presentation here. Uh-oh. Sorry, guys. Technology is wonderful. Sorry about that. I'm going to go back here to my presentation and share with you a picture of Fiesta. Here he is, right here. So wouldn't you love to have him in your workplace? I know I've enjoyed meeting him. But that's a simple accommodation, honestly. And it does require sometimes working with coworkers to be comfortable. If they're not someone, they have an allergy, or if they're not someone comfortable with having dogs around, it's something that you're going to need to work with them around. So I thought, I know that things are a little bit crazy right now in terms of hiring. And I didn't initially include this in the presentation, and then I thought, I'm afraid that a lot of people are concerned about hiring people with disabilities because of the pandemic. So I thought I would add just a little information for you about hiring during the pandemic and just allay your fears about focusing on hiring people with disabilities. So the EEOC just recently issued some guidance. They just updated it the middle of May, so it's fairly current, and I'm sure they're going to be updating it on a regular basis, and I've included the link to that information in my resources slide. But under the ADA, you know that you make decisions based on safety concerns, but those safety concerns have to be real. So you can ask people to stay home if they have symptoms, despite them having a disability. You can require a doctor's note for people coming back. And you can test and take temperatures of people with disabilities in your workplace. You don't need to treat them differently because they're vulnerable. And people who have a valid disability can ask you for an accommodation to avoid the virus. So when you receive a request for an accommodation due to the risk of exposure, then you have to look at that request in relationship to, again, is it a reasonable accommodation, like working from home? Or is working from home not possible because of the job? So again, in hiring and onboarding, you can screen for the virus. You can withdraw an offer or delay a start date based on virus symptoms. But you can't base a hiring decision solely on whether or not you think that person might be vulnerable to the virus. I think most of these are pretty straightforward and common sense, but I really would encourage you to not think you have to wait to start hiring people with disabilities until the virus is fixed, because that may be a while. And again, that means a valuable pool of thousands of people aren't available to you. And I know that for a lot of people, that's going to be an issue as people decide whether or not they're returning to your workplace. So finally, before I turn it over to Mark, I just wanted to make sure that you know that disability inclusion works. This is a quote from Randy Lewis. Randy told us, "It works even better. It engages the entire workforce. We also get more engagement, better teamwork, and better purpose, things we never would have thought. It increases your hiring pool, provides positive impact on your existing employees, and actually retention of existing employees improves. There are tax and other financial incentives. You increase your diversity so your workforce looks like the community. We know that as people age, they're more likely to have a disability, so it makes you be able to respond to an aging workforce. It actually works to improve work ethic and dedication, and your employees look to you and as a supportive employer. And then again, people with disabilities are ready and able to do the work. So here are some businesses that currently have disability inclusion initiatives. I'm sure you'll recognize a lot of these names. Some Indiana specific ones include Anthem, Lilly, Kroger, and Cook. So Walgreens designed a whole system around distribution centers and hired a significant number of people with disabilities. As a result of that particular project in the southern part of the country, all of their distribution centers have changed because they found that their productivity improved and everything that we just talked about. And UPS, they've had a successful initiative for a while. They have 3,000 employees and 300 individuals that are working with them. Cook out of Bloomington, Indiana, has an initiative with the school system where they help provide work experience, and they also work with a local disability provider to provide what's called pre-employment training services so that people have access to a place in the business to learn about the business and then look to employment in that business. So they've, over the years, hired hundreds of individuals. So that's a bunch of great employers. Now Mark's going to talk to you about what makes a great job. Mark?
What is a great job? A great job is one that you love to do, and that's working. A great job allows you to use your talent like God gave you. Like Muhammad Ali. God gave him talent to be a good boxer. God gave me a talent to be a good motivational speaker. That's my talent. A great job helps you to build up your talent and your strength. My strength is to become a motivational speaker. I'm a major in college in public speaking. I love to talk. A great job is having a great manager that helps you reach your full potential. My full potential is what I do. To go cross country and speak for my friends. And a manager helps you to make it stronger. So that's what I am. I'm a speaker, and a manager helps you to be a great motivational speaker. My three greatest talents. I have confidence in my abilities. I'm very confident of myself and everybody else. I'm very organized. I live in my apartment. I organize my movies. Anybody comes to my apartment knows that I have a very nice place to stay in. I care for everyone. I care about anybody. I care about Susan, my parents, my brothers, and what I see. I care. Work has always been important to me. I have lived on my own for 30 years. The first house that I lived in on my own was like the corner of a mom and dad's house. They thought I was going to be moving back, but no, I didn't. I stayed where I was at for 30 years. Then I have my grandpa, and I have him. I pay my own bills when I lived on my own. My goal is to become a great motivational speaker, and that's what I am. That's what in college. That's what I've been doing, motivational speaking. My work experience. I worked in rock industries. It was nice. It was nice, but you get some money, but not enough. But it was nice to work for a while. Then I worked for ice cream manufacturer. It was a family business, and I won a cardboard. I won a cardboard machine, and I was like a manager. I cleaned the bathrooms and the picnic tables and all that, and sweet. Then I found my own job at McDonald's on Town Road in New Albany, and I was the main cook. But they trained me to be a cook. And cooking French fries and hash browns. And when they sweep a lot, it means go outside and sweep the garbage that you up, like a little dustpan. I learned a lot. My different works experience. I worked at the hospital, this big from Memorial, and also I worked for Walmart for 5.5 years. Now that's where people knows me from at Walmart, because I was a people greeter. I was the best one there because with me and my mouth, what got me there to be the best people greeter. Then I worked for my family. It was called Worcester Management. I was part owner. I was making manufactured bed foundations, making frames out of wood for a bed. And it was cold. If you look under the bucket there, it's me. And that's me there. And I was working on website there, helping my family out. And I met some friends there, and those Mexicans. Also, I graduated from Jefferson Community Technical College. The downtown of Louisville connection, college connection, helped me to go to college there. Ruby's Rainbow helped and paid for my tuition. And then they did a big part of it. I don't know how to thank them, but the doctors, when I was born, didn't want me to be a college student. They wanted to put me to an institution. And so I couldn't be a college student. But look what happened. I graduated. Working at a real job, it's not easy. But I have survived. I got beat up. I was a hen. And you see all my feathers, I got beat up. But I'm still standing up alive. Lessons I have learned as an employee. You can be a great employee if you help business to be successful. For instance, I work for Walmart. I work for McDonald's. I work for the industries, and I help them to be successful. And for a job, help you develop your individual talents into strengths. It's a great job. We can all be great employees if we use your individual talent. My individual talent was strong, very strong, and that's what made you good employees. My business helps me develop talent into strength. My strength was the best motivational speaker, and that's what I wanted to be, to help my friends out. So I speak at schools, grade schools, This is my magazine, and I speak in many places. This is some of my clients. I've talked to Walmart, Penn State, Indianapolis, and Connecticut. We help people with disabilities to discover their talent. This is up to Purdue and New Albany, Indiana. And a place called Ghana that I was in. And tell you what, it was very interesting and was helping people with disabilities to have jobs to work at. And I know they can do it. Now just remember, a great job is one that you love to do. I love to work. I never be late for anything. A great job allows you to use your talent like God gave you. If we wasn't born, or if you was born, God gave you talent. Like Muhammad Ali, he wanted to be a great boxer. Just like Holyfield, who I met, he was a great boxer. He had a talent to be a boxer. So I had a talent to be a motivational speaker. A great job helps you develop your talent into strength. Very, very strong strength. A great job is having a great manager that helps you reach your full potential. And that's very important. Management will to help you to be a great employee. We can be a good employee. That is very strong though. To be a good person, that's what that means. Thank you. If you need to contact me for information, you can write this down if you want to. Thank you. Now let's go back to Susan.
Thank you, Mark. I wonder if there are people out there that would be strong enough to give you that opportunity. I would imagine lots of them would be interested in having you come speak. So making sure you have that information in your packet, guys, for where you can get a hold of him. So let's go back to the presentation. And I'm going to just change. All right, so you heard Mark. A great job is one where you as a manager develop people's skills. And I know that you're interested in getting people that are as committed, as caring, and as excited about employment as Mark is. So how do you go about it? What can you do? So I've got some tips for you. And then I'm hopefully going to show you one more video. So you really need to actively recruit and hire people with disabilities. You can't just think that they're going to come to your door, knocking on your door. People oftentimes are concerned. They have representatives that maybe don't know you exist. So reach out. The ways that you can post your positions to say that you are an inclusive workforce and you really are interested in supporting people with disabilities there is very helpful. Look at reaching out to disability service providers in your area. There are organizations like Mark mentioned, RAUC in the Bloomington area. There's Stone Belt and Life Designs in the Indianapolis area. There's Crossroads. So there are a myriad of service providers that are out there representing individuals and would love to talk to you about how to make that connection. But oftentimes employers don't know to reach out. One of the things that Work to Include is working to do is develop those resources for you so there's a one-stop shop around where to find those things. The other thing is you probably already work with the high schools in your area, but I don't know if you know that the special education programs have transition services and actually have funding for work experience programs for individuals with disabilities who are in that transition age between 16, and kids with disabilities can stay in school sometimes up to 21. So high school is a great place for you to look at developing career paths and giving people opportunity again to develop their skills while they're just making decisions about whether they want to work in those environments, and helping you to make a decision about whether that would be a good employee for you. Get your employees involved. My guess is you have employees with disabilities who are working with you, so have them involved in your disability education efforts. So if you have a disability inclusion program and you have training programs where you talk to your employees about disability and try to break those myths and stereotypes, make sure you involve your employees with disabilities in that and have them talk to other employees. And then there are grassroots efforts like Work to Include out there that employees can get involved in. A lot of communities have mayor's councils, and those councils work really hard on making your community accessible so you can connect there. Make sure you make space for diverse talent to hold roles at all levels. So people with disabilities have all types of skills, and don't just think about entry-level positions. Think about upper management positions, and help the people with disabilities who are currently working for you move into those roles and move up in the organization, just as you do. Connect with other employees in the area that have already established a disability inclusion program. Look at the list that I gave you earlier. Check out the chamber and talk to people there to see who else has done this and who has been really promoting that, and learn from them. And then there is a website called Job Doozy, which is for individuals with disabilities. And there are 14,000 Hoosiers with disabilities on that website looking for an employer just like you. So if you really want to outreach, post your positions there and start watching there. And again, make sure that the postings that you do put on other websites include something that indicates to people that you're interested. So this is gentleman, his name is Ted Brown. He's the vice president of Toyota. That company, the manufacturing unit in Princeton, has hired over 40 individuals with disabilities just in the last 4 years. And so I wanted him to talk to you a little bit about accommodation and how that's part of their work culture.
As an employer, what I have found for accommodations is we call that Kaizen. In the Toyota world, Kaizen means continuous improvement. We're always looking for ways to make the job easier so that every member can be successful at the job that they're doing. In our community, we have several ARC organizations. We have ARC of Evansville, ARC of Southwestern Indiana, Sycamore Services. All of these agencies provide services for people with disabilities. They're affiliated with vocational rehab. They are providing services for folks with disabilities to gain jobs. The number one item is to get to know those job coaches that are working in those service organizations. Bring them into our facility so they can learn our jobs, so they can understand what skills are required to perform the jobs, and then match their consumers with the skill sets required and the dreams that those consumers have to work on the campus. Secondly, having those job coaches have access to your facility to work with the supervisors, the group leaders, team leaders on the floor with that consumer so that they can become integrated and fully included into the team that they're working within. The last one that we have partnered with is the school districts. All of the school districts have programs which are employment programs working for careers for these kids. whether they have IEPs or special education programs. We've partnered with school districts in our region to provide manufacturing training so that these students have an exposure to manufacturing and they're able to join our workforce and not come in blind with no understanding of what's required to work there. Every organization out there has programs that are working towards inclusion, diversity, different things like that, that you're already educated with. So there's no special training really required in order to bring an individual in with a disability. That's another myth that a lot of people think, that there's specialized training. Oh, I need to know how to deal with this disability or that disability. In all reality, it's really just treating people the way that they want to be treated and looking for ways for every individual to be successful.
So simple as that, right?
And what's that?
Simple as that.
I'm just repeating what you said.
So just one more slide and then we'll open it up for questions. So in establishing a disability inclusion initiative, here's some do's and don'ts. Think about disability as being included in your overall diversity efforts. Ask your employees with disabilities to help, as I said before. Use welcoming language in your posts. It's okay to say, we hire people with disabilities in your job postings. That makes it comfortable for people. Make all processes accessible, including applications. Unfortunately, we've shifted so much to online applications and going through systems like Indeed that we end up screening people out. Look at that and think, well, what alternatives can you put in place? Make sure you still have a paper application. Make sure you still have the ability for a representative who's bringing someone with a disability to your business to fill out that application with them, rather than making them go through the process online that might end up screening them out. Make sure that on your website, you show people with disabilities working, that you put that in social media. You don't highlight the person's disability, no, but you have people with disabilities represented among all of your employees. Again, makes you look disability friendly. Another big tip is to establish a separate budget for accommodations. Those accommodations might be expensive and might make someone in a department a little afraid of bringing someone on. So make that not part of the discussion by having a budget for it. Include that myth breaking in your ongoing training and orientation so all your employees know, that the things that they might have thought about individuals working is not true, and show them through the research that I just talked about. Don't focus on that disability. Look at your job requirements and make sure they are requirements. I know with ADA, everybody has done that ad nauseum, but really think about, is that an important thing that I have to have? Or what are the real skills and experience needed? And you already know you can't ask unnecessary medical questions or require medical exams. You can't base hiring decisions on those myths, fears, or stereotypes. And then, as Ted said, don't wait to get it all together. Go ahead and get started and learn as you go, and learn with your employees. These are some resources for you. And with that, we'll open it up to questions. Thank you, everybody.